The pulsing bass reverberated through the walls, shaking the framed artwork on Karen's living room shelves. She clenched her jaw, her fingers tightening around the stem of her wine glass as she glared out the window at her neighbor's house. "That's it," she muttered, slamming down the glass and storming towards the front door. Her high heels clicked against the hardwood floor, the sound barely audible over the muffled thump of the music next door. Karen flung open the door, her amber eyes narrowed into slits. "Keep it down over there," she shouted, not caring if her neighbor could hear her. "Some of us are trying to enjoy a quiet evening at home." No response. Just the continued rhythm of an obnoxious pop song. Fuming, Karen marched across the neatly manicured lawn, her annoyance building with every step. She didn't bother knocking. She simply pounded her fist against the front door, her rage simmering just beneath the surface. After a few moments, the music mercifully quieted. Karen heard the sound of approaching footsteps before the door swung open, revealing a confused-looking young man. "Can I help you?" he asked cautiously. "Yes, you can," Karen snapped. "Your music is far too loud and it's disturbing the entire neighborhood. I demand that you turn it down immediately." The young man blinked, taken aback by her confrontational tone. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was that loud. Let me go check on that." He started to close the door, but Karen stuck her foot out, preventing him from shutting her out. "No, you'll turn it down right now. I won't tolerate this kind of disrespect for my property values and my peace of mind." The man hesitated, his brow furrowing. "Ma'am, I really am sorry. I'll turn it down, I promise. But there's no need to." "No, I don't want your excuses," Karen interrupted, her voice rising. "Just do it, and keep it down from now on, or there will be consequences." With that, she withdrew her foot, allowing him to close the door. Karen stood there for a moment, triumphant, before turning on her heel and striding back towards her own house. She could still hear the faint pulsing of the music, but it was significantly quieter now. "That'll teach him," she muttered, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Karen felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had asserted her dominance and put her neighbor in his place. After all, she was the homeowner here. She deserved peace and quiet, and she wasn't afraid to demand it. As she reached for the door handle, however, something made her pause. She could have sworn she'd heard the familiar thump of her own subwoofer pulsing through the walls. Furrowing her brow, Karen opened the door and stepped inside, her eyes immediately drawn to the entertainment system in the living room. Sure enough, the LED display on the receiver was lit up, and the subwoofer was vibrating with the unmistakable rhythm of the same pop song she just complained about. Karen felt her stomach drop as the realization hit her. "Oh no," she breathed, her face paling. It couldn't be. Karen frantically began checking the settings on her entertainment system, her heart racing. She turned the volume knob, wincing as the music swelled, then quickly turned it back down. There was no doubt about it. The thumping bass was emanating from her own speakers, not her neighbor's. "No, no, no," she muttered, running a hand through her perfectly coiffed hair in distress. How could this have happened? She was sure the music was coming from next door. The evidence was overwhelming, and yet... Suddenly, Karen's eyes landed on the remote control, lying innocently on the coffee table. She snatched it up, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through the settings. Sure enough, the volume was cranked up to nearly maximum, and the bass boost was turned on. I must have bumped the remote earlier," Karen whispered, her stomach turning. "Oh God, what have I done?" The realization of her mistake hit her like a ton of bricks. She had marched over to her neighbor's house, accused him of disturbing the peace, and demanded that he turn his music down, all while the offending noise had been coming from her own home the entire time. Karen felt a deep sense of mortification wash over her. "I can't believe this," she said shakily, sinking down onto the couch. Her head was spinning as she tried to process the implications of her actions. Not only had she made a complete fool of herself in front of her neighbor, but she had also potentially damaged their relationship, all because of her own thoughtlessness and lack of attention. Karen sat there, staring at the remote in her hands, as a wave of shame and regret swept over her. How could she have been so oblivious? And worse, how would she ever be able to face her neighbor again after this embarrassing incident? The sound of the doorbell ringing jolted her out of her thoughts, and Karen's heart leaped into her throat. Slowly, she rose to her feet, bracing herself for the inevitable confrontation. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself and approached the door, mentally preparing what she would say. As she pulled the door open, she found her neighbor standing there, a concerned expression on his face. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" he asked tentatively. "I heard the music coming from your house, and I wanted to make sure you were okay." Karen felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. I'm so sorry," she stammered, unable to meet his gaze. I made a terrible mistake. The noise was coming from my own home, not yours. I feel awful for yelling at you like that." Her neighbor's eyes widened in surprise, but then a look of understanding dawned on his face. "Oh, I see. Well, that's no problem at all. I'm just glad everything is all right." Karen nodded, her hands trembling slightly. I don't know what to say. I'm so embarrassed. I hope you can forgive me." "Of course," her neighbor replied, offering her a reassuring smile. "No harm done. We all make mistakes sometimes, right?" Karen nodded weakly, her heart still pounding. As her neighbor turned to leave, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread and uncertainty about how she would ever be able to face him again after this humiliating incident. The next few days were an absolute nightmare for Karen. Every time she stepped outside, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her embarrassing mistake hanging over her. She avoided eye contact with her neighbor, fearful that he would see the shame and humiliation written all over her face. And it wasn't just her neighbor that she was worried about. Karen couldn't stop thinking about how the incident might have affected her standing in the community. What if word had spread about her irrational outburst? The very thought made her stomach churn. She tried to go about her usual routine, but it was no use. Everywhere she turned, she was plagued by a nagging sense of self-consciousness. Every time she heard the faint thump of music, her heart would race as she wondered if it was coming from her own house again. Despite her best efforts to maintain a normal facade, Karen found herself increasingly on edge. She would snap at her husband over the smallest things, and her once meticulous housekeeping fell by the wayside as she struggled to keep her composure. One particularly tense evening, as Karen was preparing dinner, her husband finally broke the silence. "Honey, is everything all right?" he asked cautiously. "You've been acting a bit off lately." Karen felt her shoulders tense as she turned to face him, a forced smile plastered on her face. "Of course, everything's fine," she lied, her voice betraying a hint of irritation. "Why do you ask?" Her husband hesitated, his brow furrowed with concern. "Well, it's just that you've been so on edge, and you seem to be avoiding the neighbors. Did something happen that I should know about?" Karen's heart sank as the memory of her embarrassing confrontation came rushing back. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. How could she possibly explain what had happened without feeling utterly mortified all over again? Sensing her discomfort, her husband reached out and gently placed a hand on her arm. "Karen, you can talk to me," he said softly. "I'm here for you, whatever it is." The genuine concern in his voice was too much for Karen to bear. She felt her carefully constructed facade crumbling as she finally allowed the truth to spill out. I made a terrible mistake," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I thought the music was coming from our neighbor's house, so I went over there and yelled at him. But it was coming from our own speakers the whole time." Her husband's eyes widened in surprise, but to his credit, he didn't laugh or judge her. Instead, He pulled her into a comforting embrace, rubbing soothing circles on her back as she struggled to compose herself. "Oh, Karen," he murmured. "I'm sure it was just an honest mistake. No one's perfect, you know." Karen sniffled, clinging to him as the weight of her embarrassment threatened to overwhelm her. "But what if the neighbors heard about it? What if they think I'm some kind of crazy entitled?" Her husband shushed her gently. "I'm sure they understand. And even if they don't, who cares? The important thing is that you apologized and made it right. That's what really matters." Karen nodded shakily, feeling a glimmer of hope amid the overwhelming sense of shame. Perhaps her husband was right. Maybe with time, she could move past this embarrassing incident and restore her reputation in the community. As she clung to him, Karen vowed to herself that she would never let her pride and entitlement get the better of her again. This was a lesson she couldn't afford to forget. Over the next few weeks, Karen found herself avoiding the neighborhood as much as possible. She would scurry from her car to the front door, head down, praying that she wouldn't run into her neighbor. The thought of facing him again was simply too much to bear. But one day, as Karen was returning from a trip to the grocery store, her luck ran out. She was just about to open her front door when she heard a familiar voice calling out to her. "Mrs. Anderson, how wonderful to see you." Karen froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Slowly, she turned to see her neighbor, Mr. Williams, approaching her with a warm smile on his face. Hello, Mr. Williams," she stammered, mustering a weak smile. I didn't expect to see you out here." "Yes, well, I was just taking a stroll around the block," he said, his eyes crinkling with genuine friendliness. "I've been meaning to come by and check on you. I hope there's no lingering hard feelings after, well, you know." Karen felt the blood rush to her cheeks as the memory of her embarrassing outburst came flooding back. "Oh, no, not at all," she lied, shifting her weight uncomfortably. I'm the one who should be apologizing. I made a terrible mistake that day, and I feel absolutely awful about it." Mr. Williams held up a hand, his expression reassuring. "Please, don't worry about it. It was an honest mistake, and I'm just glad we were able to clear the air. I know how stressful it can be dealing with unwanted noise, especially in our own homes." Karen nodded, relief washing over her. Yes, of course. She paused, mustering the courage to meet his gaze. "I really am sorry for the way I behaved. It was completely uncalled for, and I hope you can forgive me." Of course, Mr. Williams replied, his smile widening. "There's no need to apologize. Water under the bridge, as they say." Karen felt a weight lift from her shoulders, and she couldn't help but return his smile, albeit tentatively. "Well, I'm grateful for your understanding. It means a lot to me." "Anytime, Mrs. Anderson," Mr. Williams said with a nod. "Now, I won't keep you any longer. I'm sure you have plenty to do. But please, if there's anything I can ever do for you, don't hesitate to let me know." "Thank you, Mr. Williams," Karen replied, feeling a newfound sense of appreciation for her neighbor. "I'll keep that in mind." As Mr. Williams turned and continued on his way, Karen watched him go, a mixture of relief and regret swirling within her. She was grateful that he had been so gracious and understanding, but she couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt over her own behavior. Shaking her head, Karen turned and unlocked her front door, stepping inside and closing it firmly behind her. As she set the grocery bags down on the kitchen counter, she made a silent vow to herself. She would never let her pride and entitlement get the better of her again. This incident had been a humbling lesson, and she was determined to learn from it. In the days that followed her chance encounter with Mr. Williams, Karen found herself reflecting on her behavior with a newfound sense of clarity. The initial sting of embarrassment had faded, replaced by a growing understanding of how her own actions had contributed to the situation. As she went about her daily routine, Karen couldn't help but notice the small things she had previously taken for granted. The friendly wave from a neighbor, the cheerful conversations at the local grocery store, the general sense of community that had once been a source of comfort. But now, she saw it all through a different lens, one tainted by her own self-centered perspective. Slowly, a realization began to dawn on her. Her entitled behavior had not only caused harm to her relationship with Mr. Williams, but it had also, in a way, isolated her from the very community she claimed to value. By lashing out and demanding that others cater to her preferences, she had inadvertently pushed them away, eroding the very sense of belonging she had once taken for granted. With this newfound awareness, Karen found herself observing her neighbors with a renewed sense of empathy. She noticed the way they looked out for one another, offering help and support, and how their actions, however small, seemed to weave a tapestry of kindness and understanding within the neighborhood. It was a stark contrast to the way she had behaved, and the realization left Karen feeling ashamed and humbled. She had always prided herself on being a good neighbor, but now she saw that her actions had done nothing but sow discord and resentment. Determined to make amends, Karen began to make small gestures of goodwill, a friendly smile and wave as she passed by, an offer to help a neighbor with their yard work, or a freshly baked batch of cookies left on a doorstep. Each act, no matter how seemingly insignificant, was a step towards rebuilding the bridges she had inadvertently burned. And as she witnessed the warmth and gratitude radiating from those around her, Karen began to understand the true value of community, not just in terms of property values or personal convenience, but in the deep human connections that could be forged when people looked beyond their own narrow interests and embraced the needs of others. It was a profound lesson, one that Karen knew she would carry with her for the rest of her life. She had learned, in the most humbling of ways, that true strength and fulfillment did not come from wielding power or demanding deference, but from cultivating empathy, understanding, and a genuine connection with those around her. As she settled into her living room, sipping a cup of tea and gazing out at the peaceful neighborhood, Karen couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of appreciation for the world beyond her own front door. She had been given a second chance, and she was determined not to squander it. In the weeks that followed her embarrassing encounter with Mr. Williams, Karen found herself undergoing a profound transformation. Gone was the entitled, self-absorbed woman she had once been, replaced by a more introspective and empathetic individual. As she went about her daily routine, Karen made a conscious effort to be more mindful of those around her. She made it a point to greet her neighbors with a genuine smile, taking the time to ask about their lives and truly listen to their responses. When she noticed a nearby family struggling to carry their groceries, she didn't hesitate to lend a helping hand. But the most significant change came when Karen decided to get involved with the local community center. Inspired by the sense of belonging and purpose she had witnessed in her neighbors, she began volunteering her time, offering to assist with various events and initiatives. At first, it was an unfamiliar and slightly uncomfortable experience for Karen. She was used to being the one in control, the one demanding attention and deference. But as she immersed herself in the world of community service, she found herself shedding those old habits and embracing a newfound sense of humility. Karen marveled at the way her neighbors came together, pooling their resources and talents to improve the lives of those around them. Whether it was organizing a food drive for the local food bank or planning a holiday party for underprivileged children, the community center was a hub of activity and goodwill. And as Karen threw herself wholeheartedly into these endeavors, she began to feel a sense of purpose and fulfillment that had been sorely lacking in her life. Gone were the days of mindless consumerism and petty grievances. Now, her focus was on making a tangible difference in the lives of those around her. The transformation was not without its challenges, of course. Karen still found herself occasionally slipping back into her old ways, her entitled tendencies surfacing in moments of stress or frustration. But each time, she would take a deep breath, reflect on the lessons she had learned, and renew her commitment to being a better, more compassionate neighbor. And as she witnessed the positive impact of her efforts, Karen began to realize that the true measure of a person's worth was not in the size of their home or the opulence of their possessions, but in the way they treated others and the contributions they made to their community. It was a humbling revelation, but one that filled Karen with a sense of purpose and determination. She was no longer content to be the self-absorbed, entitled woman she had once been. Now she was driven to be a force for good, to use her time and resources to make a lasting difference in the lives of those around her. As she looked towards the future, Karen couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. The road ahead would not be easy, but she was more than ready to embrace the challenge, knowing that the rewards would be far greater than any material possession could ever provide. As the months passed, Karen's newfound commitment to community service only continued to grow. She immersed herself in a variety of volunteer projects, from organizing neighborhood cleanups to spearheading a mentorship program for underprivileged youth. With each passing day, Karen felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment that she had never experienced before. The work was often challenging, but the joy she derived from making a tangible difference in the lives of others was more than enough to keep her motivated. However, even as Karen embraced this new chapter in her life, she couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease. There was one aspect of her past that she had yet to fully confront: her embarrassing confrontation with Mr. Williams. Try as she might, Karen couldn't shake the memory of that fateful day when her sense of entitlement had gotten the better of her and led her to make a complete fool of herself. The shame and regret she had felt in that moment still haunted her, a constant reminder of the person she had once been. One afternoon, as Karen was helping to sort donations at the community center, Mr. Williams walked through the door, a warm smile on his face. Karen's heart skipped a beat, and she felt a familiar surge of anxiety wash over her. But this time, instead of avoiding him, Karen mustered her courage and approached Mr. Williams. "Mr. Williams," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "do you have a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." Mr. Williams seemed surprised by her request, but he nodded and gestured for her to lead the way. Karen led him to a quiet corner of the room, her palms sweating as she tried to find the right words. I wanted to apologize again for my behavior that day," she began, her eyes downcast. "I was so caught up in my own sense of entitlement and frustration that I failed to see the bigger picture. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm truly sorry for the way I treated you." Mr. Williams listened patiently, his expression one of understanding. "Karen, I appreciate your apology," he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "But you've already made amends for that, and I've long since forgiven you. What matters now is the person you've become." Karen looked up, her eyes shining with emotion. "But I can't help but feel that I've betrayed the values of this community, the ones that you and so many others have worked so hard to uphold. I want to make things right, to prove that I'm worthy of being a part of this neighborhood." Mr. Williams nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. "Well, from what I've seen, you're already well on your way to doing just that. The work you've been doing at the community center is a testament to your commitment to this place and the people in it." He paused, offering Karen a warm smile. "You know, we all make mistakes, Karen. The true measure of a person is how they respond to those mistakes and how they use them to grow and become better. And from where I'm standing, you've done an admirable job of that." Karen felt a weight lift from her shoulders, and she couldn't help but return Mr. Williams' smile, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Williams," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "That means more to me than you know." As they continued their conversation, Karen felt a sense of closure, a newfound peace that had been eluding her for so long. She had finally confronted her past, and in doing so, she had taken another important step towards becoming the person she truly wanted to be. In the months that followed her heartfelt conversation with Mr. Williams, Karen's commitment to the community only continued to deepen. She threw herself wholeheartedly into her volunteer work, pouring her time and energy into making a tangible difference in the lives of those around her. Whether it was organizing a holiday toy drive for underprivileged children or spearheading a neighborhood beautification project, Karen approached each task with a renewed sense of purpose and passion. Gone were the days of her entitled, self-centered behavior. Now she was driven by a genuine desire to uplift and empower her fellow community members. And as Karen's involvement in the community grew, so too did her reputation. Word of her tireless efforts and selfless acts of kindness began to spread, and soon she found herself being recognized and praised by her neighbors for her invaluable contributions. It was a far cry from the embarrassment and shame she had once felt, and Karen couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and fulfillment in the transformation she had undergone. But just when Karen thought she had finally put the past behind her, fate had one more surprise in store. It was a crisp autumn evening when Karen received an unexpected knock at her door. Puzzled, she opened it to find Mr. Williams standing on her doorstep, a serious expression on his face. "Mr. Williams," Karen greeted him, a hint of concern in her voice. "Is everything all right?" "Karen," he began, his voice grave. "I'm afraid I have some news that I think you should hear." Karen felt her heart skip a beat, her mind racing with 1,000 possibilities. Had something happened in the community? Had she done something wrong? Mr. Williams hesitated for a moment, then continued. "It's about the incident with the music a few months ago. I have something to confess." Karen felt her stomach drop, the memory of that humiliating episode flooding back to her. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Well, the truth is..." Mr. Williams paused, a sheepish expression crossing his face. "The music you heard that day wasn't coming from my house. It was actually coming from your own speakers." Karen stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What? But how?" she stammered, her mind racing to make sense of his revelation. Mr. Williams let out a sigh. "It turns out that the volume on your entertainment system had somehow been turned up to maximum, and the bass boost was engaged. I noticed it while I was out on my daily walk and decided to come by and let you know." Karen felt the blood drain from her face as the implications of his words sank in. All this time, she had been convinced that the noise had been coming from her neighbor's house, when in reality, it had been her own doing all along. "Oh my God," she breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. I can't believe this. I feel like such a fool." Mr. Williams reached out and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Karen, please don't be so hard on yourself. It was an honest mistake, and I know you've more than made up for it with all the amazing work you've been doing in the community." Karen nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of emotions. "But still, I can't believe I put you through all of that. And for me to have the audacity to march over to your house and accuse you, when it was my own doing." "It's water under the bridge, Karen," Mr. Williams said reassuringly. "I'm just glad we were able to clear the air and that you found such a wonderful way to give back to the community. That's what truly matters." Karen felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, and she couldn't help but pull Mr. Williams into a warm embrace. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for your understanding and for being such a wonderful neighbor." As she pulled away, Karen couldn't help but feel a sense of closure, not just for the incident with the music, but for the entire journey she had undergone in rediscovering her sense of purpose and community. And in that moment, she knew that her life would never be the same. She had been given a second chance, and she was determined to make the most of it, to continue being a force for good in the world around her.